Good afternoon, David. This is our 35th episode of No Art, No Life.
35 episodes?
Yes, as of today.
It's wonderful, Jack. Um, it shows that we have some sort of discipline, right?
I think it does, yes.
Um, so glad to be with you and talk to you about the various things that concern the world of Jack Cole and David Duvall. And what do we want to accomplish on No Art, No Life? What are we after, really? There always has to be some underpinning to a title like that, which is, I think, a title that says everything.
I think it does. But are you asking me perhaps to
What are we
venture...
after? What are we after with what do we want to tell our ever growing population of people that are watching us?
I would venture to a degree, if I may say so myself, that it's a very selfless cause, because we are certainly not doing anything less than hoping to draw people to themselves and share the investigative spirit that we share, not in the hope of, for the most part, bringing more attention to ourselves, but to suggest to people that they do the same for their own hearts.
Yes, so we can suggest that. You can't bring the horse to the water, of course,
No.
but we're trying to help. That's, of course, what music criticism really is. How can you really appreciate a work of music by reading about it only?
Correct.
That's so important to go right to the source. And so what could writing about music mean to anyone, except the fact that the writing, like in my case as a child with Honecker,
Mm-hmm.
he led me to the Chopin pieces or the others that I wanted to hear because the writing was so evocative.
Mm-hmm.
And you could be so euphoric about a piece that you overestimate it, and another person doesn't get it or doesn't want to hear it. But the idea of listening to a piece of music is it. You don't have to read about it.
True. And do you agree, let me ask you this, that one need not know the mechanisms that a trained musician has in order to form a pretty high appraisal of the work? In other words, we don't anticipate that a Beethoven or Liszt or anyone from the canon felt that the listener had to know the tools of the trade in order to assess the work. Do we agree?
I do agree, and I think it's an important item because many people that listen to concert music or what they call classical music, I hate that term, the classical age, that could confuse people. The classical age that they usually talk about is the Mozart, early Beethoven, Haydn, and so forth. But it's not a good title for us, and we're losing an audience even from that title, which sounds too you have to read the classics or you.
That's
you
a
know.
great question that I've never posed to you. If we were to time travel to the 19th century, let's say the mid 19th century, and of course there was a distinction between popular culture and art culture even then. But what we now think of as art music, or now unfortunately called classical music, was there an all-encompassing term at that time? I don't think there was.
No.
So how did people make the distinction, if at all, then?
Well, there's an answer that says they didn't have a distinction. When they heard, let's say, the overture to Smetana's Martyred Bride, they, from their own peasant roots, understood that music perfectly.
Yes.
As Rosa Newmark once said, you cannot really become a Czech until you know the music of Smetana.
Mm-hmm.
It's a complicated thing. As music became more and more academy made,
Mm-hmm.
the composer couldn't make any living at all out from their music. How could a Milton Babbitt or any American composer not have an actual form of living?
Mm-hmm.
Virgil Thompson was a critic, so he avoided what he called the taint of pedagogy.
Mm.
But almost everyone else had to teach.
Mm-hmm.
And all the piano teachers have to teach, and the violin teachers, and very once in a while, Madame Levine or Ivan Glamian in the violin became, famous and highly touted, or someone won a competition and they became the teacher to study with. But in the 19th century, Liszt would say, as we've said in another program,
mm-hmm.
well, you better go to the conservatory if that's the way you play.
Right.
There was a much more creative atmosphere in playing, and you didn't need a diploma for everything. I tell my students, if you want a doctorate, just, get a good forger in Chinatown to do it for you,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, now we know it's ridiculous. Today in the newspapers, they're talking about, all of the college graduates that can't get a job because there are no jobs. And of course, artificial intelligence will take away their specialty. Because you see, can't be a specialist any longer. You have to be a generalist. You have to absolutely go toward every possible opening. And of course, I think that every artist has more than one openings. Their soul is burdened with much more than the average person would like. And doesn't mean the average person can't be burdened with all of the terrors of life and the difficulties that we are encountering now in a world just topsy-turvy. However, the idea of stopping and looking at yourself has become almost negligible now. Nobody just goes into themselves. So I said, no art, no life. What does that mean? Well, you can't really, in my opinion, live. In the 19th century, you had a very different attitude toward the arts. As soon as they started writing books about it, well, there was no book on the sonata form until about 1830. They didn't know necessarily they were writing to these rules. They were not rules. Everyone was broken by Schubert or Beethoven or Haydn or whoever, But we became crucified. Rules, grades. Poor people have to go to school and get a grade. When Schoenberg had to grade his students at the University of Southern California when he came to America, he was astounded. He never gave a grade to a composition pupil. The great composer Ernest Bloch was the director of the Cleveland Museum. He was probably fired because he was so adamant about you can't give grades to people like these. There's, this idea. Well, look at this. This drives me crazy, the idea that we have to follow rigidly every minute of our lives this clock. You said to me you would be here at 12:45. You have the great manners and the important morality to always be on time. I'm a little late by 2 minutes at the most, 3, but yes, you must be on time. Well, if someone said we want to have your essay on Beethoven next Friday, you're going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people cannot possibly follow a deadline.
What do you make of that? Because I have people that cite my observance of time almost like it might be a bit of a pathology.
Oh no, the pathology is the person that is not on time and makes you wait. If they make you wait, you leave.
Mm.
One of the most marvelous persons I've ever known in many ways. A woman that was very, very, very attractive, and we had many interests. But she had a fault.
Mm.
Always she made me wait. Wherever I would have to meet. Now, this is intolerable. So she was dropped from the what do you call it? The little world that we inhabited. And
So what is the motivation of the person who is lagging?
well, well, it could be very many things. This lagging, it could be, real hostility to being on time. I mean, that must be the first one. I've got to have power over you, and this is a very easy way to do it. You're going to wait for me, isn't that something? That means I'm something. So, well, I think so.
Yes,
I think so,
agree.
Jack. Really,
I do, yeah. I'm only laughing. What is the phrase? With the shock of recognition.
The shock of recognition.
Yes.
That's a wonderful thing. I hope that everyone that buys my paintings, and they better do it soon, will have the shock of recognition for, we have to be able to get your work out into the world. Of course, every painter, as Henry Miller says, would like to give it away, would like to have someone have their work.
Now, you have, however, been pretty adamant about resisting that.
Yeah.
You've always told me that you, by
Never.
principle, don't do that.
Yes, never have I given any painting or drawing away. Most of my work has never been seen, but yes, it can be bought in the book on Amazon called Selected Paintings and Drawings of David Duval, and I hope that, thousands of you that are listening to this do that, because that's a part of me that I would really love you to know. Just like your novels and essay books, yes, you would, you know that you suffered greatly over them, that you worked very, very hard with great pleasure. A lot of people don't understand that the agony, as Philip Roth said, has to be built into the endeavor. The agony has to be there. You just can't become a superhuman being and go to your desk every day and make sure that, the well of creativity is ready for you.
That's right. Nothing seems to come save for things that are the result of pushing through resistant material. I always come back to that idea, and I really relish that. If I may...
Say it again.
I just feel that nothing really ever comes except unless we're pushing through resistant material. And I'm stealing that very much from that book that I've cited before by William Bryant Logan called The Oak, the Frame of Civilization, where he argues that mankind seems to ascend intellectually and in the arts in the latitudes in the past where oak trees occur, because they furnished something that the mind and heart and hand could then engage with, and that only when we engage with something that resists us does whatever is within come forth. And I'm also thinking again of our title and its source, and it goes back, I think, to where you invoked a theme maybe about 5 minutes ago about the generalist. And I think perhaps that's another of our themes, the value of the generalist, because I think the latitude that I always enjoy in my conversations with you is that of the pivoting that only a generalist can do.
Yes, we're musicians. And we know a great deal more than the average musician about the composer's lives, their letters, their music. I was very lucky to be music director of, a radio station. And so, I mean, it gave me access to knowing so much music that I would never have looked into. And it really, it helped me artistically. I was making a living programming the music for the tri-state area, as they say, at WNCN, which is now a legendary name in the history of radio.
Yes.
I mean, it would, if there was a book on radio written right now, it would certainly have to have me in it, that's for sure, because I directed the whole course from the LP into how to program a very serious station, and on WNCN's Tragedy as a station that became a rock and roll station when it didn't make enough money for the owners. So, as I once said to someone, I know they'll get me sometime, but I was very strong and I kept alive a station. I really believe it. I kept alive a station, and all the people that worked there felt there was a real great privilege to do this. WNCN died in 1990, and there's never been one, of course, again. It was the last, I would call it the last real commercial station.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you live under capitalism, wouldn't it be nice to make the proper,
Yes.
feedback of money, while instead of begging for money from every source every 5 minutes, where the commercials may not be there, but they're just as bad, and it's in their way. That begging
Yes.
attitude for the arts, for something good. Oh, let's have your money.
And to me, the latent message I get in my mind, not a conscious mind, but something instinctive, is that when the begging keeps coming from the beggars of those formats, it starts to translate in my mind as if they don't have faith in the thing for which they're fighting,
Mhm.
because they have to beg people to support it.
Yeah, they don't.
And what I think made WNCN so mighty to me, as a student who was suddenly enthralled by art music and playing with the dial in Northport Village on Long Island, and suddenly, not only, of course, was it mighty when I knew its content, even the signal was strong. The little dots on the digital tuner all went to the highest
Mhm.
vertical height in measuring the strength of the signal.
It had a
And-
good strength indeed, 104.3, and
Yes.
go on, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
I was just simply going to say that though its format was commercial, it reinforced to me the notion, however perverse this sounds, that art music also was a material thing that people would surrender material wealth to preserve by their impulse, not having to be begged to do it in the other stations that survive now, where there has to be a plea for funding. I always just had the impression that was part of, again, and I say this word with great care, the glamour of what New York stood for. That also was the notion that there was this mighty commercial station, as distinct from the public stations that were playing records, but didn't have the elegance and the notion of the institutional. And I don't mean that as a diatribe, but the notion that I even imagined the location, probably in a much larger edifice than it was. But I think all those things are important, and I don't know a source. I mean, the internet doesn't give one that impression, even though one can, access any piece, really, on their phone late at night and hear 9,000 different versions of Opus 10 number 1 of Chopin. It doesn't have that same power that some kind of emblematic institution of might in its curatorial stamp can have. And I felt that was the blessing of coming into that when I did. It was quite something.
Yes, that's a beautiful discussion of that, because the station means so much still in the minds of many, many people. They will remind me almost weekly somehow about WNC, and it will come up. I mean, here's a station that I was music director from '67 until
Yes.
until it was over with, and till '90, and so we haven't had anything like that in 35, 36 years now. Really, there's no outlet that gives such a comprehensive view of the canon and the outer limits to it as well. I remember once when the manager, who had no idea what classical music was, and I had so much power, and so it was an anniversary concert which we had every single night of the week. It was a real favorite at 7 o'clock, a wonderful time while you could be eating. Who knows? I don't know what they do. People don't listen to the radio properly because you have to also listen to it as if you were alone in a concert hall. But I had a whole hour. It was so daring of me that I look back and say, how could I have gotten away with it? And in a certain way, you see, I had so brainwashed everyone to understand whatever I did, a God was programming this, not me. It was so important that this piece, because it was in the right key next to the last piece, and it was a song instead of an instrumental work. Everything in these 168 hours a week was calculated by me.
Yes.
And I worked very, very hard for the public. That was an altruistic thing because there was nothing in it for me. They would not give me at that time a program of my own.
Mm.
I had to really take it when I could.
Okay.
Because there is always in every corporation a group that wants to stop you.
What do you
They
make of that? Because if the person that they want to stop would cause an elevation,
They're not interested in elevation.
well, I don't mean just elevation in terms of spirit and mind.
Mm-hmm.
I also mean even in profit. It would seem to me I knew that you were the guiding hand, at least at the time at which I came into it. So I can't imagine what would be the force that would want to stop that.
Many.
Okay.
I mean, I can't go into it. It's part
Sure.
of my
Yeah.
autobiography, but I mean, there's. That's why I say, well, I knew they'd get me eventually.
Mm.
Meaning, all of us that love, the art of music, because it was too good.
Yes, and that's the problem, I think, with the internet, in that a student who's now coming into, let's say, the piano, as I did, everything is there, but they're
That doesn't mean anything. You have
right.
to know
There's
what
no,
to,
and there's no presiding sense of guidance.
No. When I had my course at Juilliard for year after year called, the recording class, I forget the title. Well, our recording class for 2 hours was me giving recordings to people that had never even heard of Cortot or Friedman or, the best they know would be Ashkenazi or a modern pianist. They were, of course, Horowitz always, but there was nothing known of the great golden age. Even to this day, my film, The Golden Age of the Piano, I mean, someone from Russia will say, I would have never been a pianist, because they never let us hear anyone but Gilels or Richter,
Yes.
We didn't know there was Capels or anything like that,
Right.
or the Friedman mazurkas. And, I would sometimes, before I would give a test. How many mazurkas did Chopin write? Because tests meant nothing to me, or grades. If you came to the class and you looked like you were getting something, no notes. I don't want you to take notes.
That has always been my impulse, even though I write everything down now. As a student, I had a great resistance to note taking. And here you admonish people not to
I
take
did.
notes.
No, you don't take notes.
Can you tell?
Well, you can't be listening
Yes.
if you're writing, that Beethoven was born in, that's, it's very much more important for things to live within you,
Yes.
What does it matter what you forget? It's what you remember that is what you needed to remember.
Yes.
We've talked on so many things that I wanted to go back to the idea of what people in their analysis, which to me is almost always paralysis. I know very well the forms of music, and I have often said, it would be great for you to know the structure of this Beethoven sonata because it's just so extraordinary. But please, the average person cannot get that. That's not what they're after. They're after the emotional and the intellectual impact of what time itself is doing to their whole nervous system and soul.
Yes.
I don't want you to say that's a 6/4 chord before the cadenza. Okay, here we go. Oh, this is a 5 chord, or this is a tritone, the devil in music, all of that nonsense. It's nonsense. It's like, going to school today to learn perspective. There's no artist that needs to have perspective now. Who wants to do that? That's from an illustrator or something, or a photograph. A painter is now free. Thank goodness. No representation necessary, and no. The only thing is, I said, I love copying the masters, that kind of thing, but they're never just to be exact. But here we go in a world that is so filled with the analytic and the timings and the this, everything has to fall in place, and you're always late, or you're always on time, or you're just so my God, here I go to my factory where I'm already going to lose my soul, and I'm going to make an automobile with 5,000 people, and I put my card in there at 9 o'clock so they know I was really there, and then I take it out and I punch it for. Oh, would you rather do anything but that? You see, or would you like to go to the army and have someone even worse tell you exactly what to do and get up? I want to get up when I want to.
Right.
I don't want anyone telling me anything about time. Time is the most fascinating structural thing in the world.
Yes, it is.
How much did I practice today? Someone says, I practiced 30 minutes, but that person was Horowitz. Boy, does he know how to practice.
Yes.
When Cortot met Horowitz and he heard him play, and he says, tell me about your... Oh, you know how to practice, he said to Horowitz.
Well, this
you know, last week we talked about the
that's
amazing
exactly
amount. Yeah,
exactly the theme I wanted to pursue now. You mentioned the notion of paralysis through analysis, and I wanted to venture something along those lines and how perhaps you can comment on what I feel is something that I have to fight as I age in terms of analysis affecting practicing, particularly in Bach. And I'd like your opinion on this passage. Now, this is from Charles Rosen's piano notes, and of course, I've heard many times your interviews with him, and there are some other things I was going to reference.
well, he's one of the great scholars of music, and he's a penetrating intellectual, a great analyzer of things.
Yes, and this is where I'm going with this. When I was in high school, and let's imagine I was wrestling with the fugue from a fugue of the Well-Tempered Clavier, I never found the memorizing process to be a conscious action. And to boot, though I knew there were successive entrances of the fugue subjects and all of its horizontal considerations.
And that is the form of the music as you're practicing it. That really is. That's
Right.
all you have to have.
Right. But I think the ease of memorization from a kind of innocence, and I hope we can communicate to the audience what I mean by this, was content with just a homophonic impression. I didn't feel obliged to really know or keep the lines separate in my mind, so long as my fingers remembered the piece. And I know you know what I'm talking about.
Sure.
So I was stunned then to read this passage, because as I aged, I started to feel a moral responsibility to increase the level of my awareness when I practice, as if, to a degree, as I'm now, wrestling with the fugue at the end of the G major toccata. And I came into a time of life where I don't permit myself a homophonic impression of it anymore. I feel like I should be able to bring to the piano, as if for the three voices, 3 degrees of consciousness, and track those and not let it sink into a homophonic impression. Now,
Tell the audience what homophony means. Homophonic.
I guess the best notion would be is music. Do you agree, David, became more homophonic as history went along, where for the most part there's a single melody and everything else supports it from the texture?
Of course, yes.
Whereas Bach, we can imagine, there is no line that really has precedence over another. The combined impression is really coming from 2, 3, 4, 5, what have you, horizontal independent elements.
Which he called, a 5-voice fugue, or 4, or 3, or 2.
Right.
There's only one 2-voiced fugue, the E minor,
Okay, is that
from the Well-Tempered.
right?
Yeah.
So, however, if one is passive, one can still get a generic homophonic notion of that, meaning just a beautiful texture in which we don't acknowledge the independence of the lines. And when I used to think that way, it was easier to memorize those pieces. Now that I've become aware, and what I think is morally responsible to keeping my mind fit, I find it really hard to memorize them. And then I was shocked to read this, where to a degree, someone as academic as Rosen says, playing Bach for oneself or a friend or pupil, looking at the score, the way the Art of Fugue or the Well-Tempered Keyboard or the Goldberg variations would have been played before 1770, raised few problems. Nothing had to be brought out. the harpsichord or a pianist on a Silbermann pianoforte, the instrument manufactured by a friend of Bach, experienced the different voices through the movement of the hands. The listener saw the score and followed all the contrapuntal complexity, disentangling the sound visually while listening. Bach's art, and this is the part I really would like your reaction, did not depend on hearing the different voices and separating them in the mind, but on appreciating the way what was separate on paper blended into a wonderful, wonderful whole.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that's true? Do you think Bach had the intention of permitting the homophonic impression?
No.
All right, so you're saying this, in a way, you disagree with this.
Yes, yes.
His ideal listener would be able to
agree
hear all...
with some of the material in there, because he's always provocative and he can make you think. Because indeed, when you do see, while you're listening, if you do see a score and you are a musician of a pretty high level analytically, to see the Bach fugue in front of you and all those voices, yes, that's quite wonderful if you can do that. I don't believe many people can do that.
I have even experimented with trying to, in the case of the G major
Bach does not. He does not have an interest in homophonic.
I didn't think so. What I mean
sound.
is, in my practicing, and you can imagine, this can slow one down with my level of skill, which is common, than to a matter of months or years if one says, I'm going to get this so I have a consciousness of the contrapuntal of this while I'm executing it, as opposed to passively getting used to a texture that can feel very much like a 19th century piece if I permit myself not to think horizontally. Now, here's the analogy that I think is kind of fun. This is from the chapter of Walden called The Ponds. And I think it's saying something very similar. That Thoreau, as he matures, and the youthful element yields to a more analytical self and seeing what the emblematic is, he's describing in this passage the idea of what one can see, especially in winter, when one has the chance to walk out on the ice in the pond and look back on the land where one was in the woods and hence is surrounded by the environment of the woods and hence can't see the individual lines, as if suggesting that when we're in the woods, to a degree, we're in homophony. But when he can pull away, and this is what I think is brilliant. I have been surprised to detect encircling the pond, even where a thick wood has just been cut down on the shore, a narrow shelf-like path in the steep hillside, alternately rising and falling, approaching and receding from the water's edge, as old probably as the race of man here, worn by the feet of aboriginal hunters, and still from time to time unwittingly trodden by the present occupants of the land. This is particularly distinct to one standing on the middle of the pond in winter, just after a light snow has fallen, appearing as a clear undulating white line, unobscured by weeds and twigs, and very obvious a quarter of a mile off in many places, where in summer it is hardly distinguishable close at hand. The snow reprints it, as it were, in clear white type, alto relievo. The ornament, so I feel as I age, like Thoreau, pulling away from his living in the woods and pulling himself onto the ice, the clear vision of the pond, that the lines become so outlined that he can't resist seeing these trails that the snow reveal, that have been there since the time of the Indian, as he's saying, but you only can see them in the cold light of the snow, revealing these things that vanish in summer and when we're in the midst of them. So I miss the woods, so to speak, of practicing Bach and being able to memorize it easily and come away with an also greater degree of confidence in playing the music in public, because the tactile feel of the homophonic is much easier to maintain, I think, under stress. But do you agree, as one matures, that there's maybe some credit in the moral struggle of at least trying to be Bachian and surrender that youthful time in the woods to standing on the ice and saying, I'm not going to give up on this piece so I can stand on the ice and see as the snow reveals these hidden trails that I can't see when I'm in the woods? Which do you think is the more, and I don't mean to always reduce practicing to moral terms, but I think that's one of the problems of classical piano study. We always are left with this puritanical sense of responsibility, especially in the 20th century, of feeling, am I up to the piece? Am I rendering it properly? Does someone in the audience think I'm worthy of it?
It's getting worse and worse.
Yes, and it gets worse and worse. So what do you think? Is that particular kind of high aim, which makes the practicing all the more difficult than it already is? I can't seem to absolve myself of that morality when I practice the final movement of the G major toccata.
And don't dare leave it.
Okay.
You can't dare, because it's, I mean, who else but you would be able to take a passage from Walden and to compare it with the passage from Charles Rosen? And yet, yes, I see your point, of course,
Okay.
but it's so subtle and very, very difficult stuff. I think you know, for me, when I would say to a listener, because they come and they ask you, you know, I feel so insecure. I don't know anything about music. I go to Landowska, who says to a friend in a letter, well, when she said, when I play the D sharp minor, which is already E flat minor fugue, you see, which key is it? I mean, it's a. You don't need to know all this stuff. That's what I'm saying. You've got to envelop yourself. Just listen carefully as you can, because Bach's beauty of music and his basic greatness of mankind's potential is all in his music. It'll just come into you. You don't have to know when this voice comes. You'll after, because remember, this is not like a book, which you will read once maybe, and you should read much more. You will have to hear, especially if you are the player, you will have to hear this fugue in 100,000 times until it kills you.
Yes.
It's going to kill you eventually, unless you have a morality behind it in one way or another.
So that's the morality I wrestle with at this time of life as a practicer for Bachian texture, feeling that I can no longer be the youth in summer in the woods. I am now standing on the ice in the pond, even if it really hurts my vanity, because then it also slows down the amount of time in which I can prepare something that in youth I could have maybe dispatched quickly, just allowing myself to remember.
But in maturity, there's no great reason to rush.
Right.
What were you rushing all those learning? It was for the time that you had to play it in your piano class at school.
Yeah.
And those, you know.
I agree.
Well, please let's start with getting rid of all school.
Yes.
Oh gosh. Make sure that you don't send your child to school by 3 or 4. I mean, this is going to make it harder and harder for them. My opinion, of course, ladies and gentlemen. I know that it costs a lot of money to send your kiddo to what is it? Nursery school? I don't know what they call it.
Yes.
Preschool.
Yes.
Preschool. I would have gone out of my mind if I had to go to school. It was those years until school that were so adventurous and marvelous, that gave me my personality, because it was created alone.
Yes.
You have to create yourself alone. No one's going to do it, and no book can do it, and no ridiculous elementary school teacher can do it. They're lucky that they have ever read Walden.
So your first experience of school was kindergarten.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh God, and I cried and cried and cried. I mean, I couldn't believe it. You had the afternoon one and the morning one.
Yes.
And to me, it was, I don't know how, but I really do believe it. There was a built-in status that, you know, you if you went to the afternoon one, or could be the other one, I don't know. It was of a higher. You were of a higher class.
Interesting.
Even though they were, you know, just picked at random. But in my own little brain, at that time, or maybe I saw in that first day that the class I had was, you know, not too superior, and I wasn't too happy with it, and maybe the other one was superior. All I know is that I cried my eyes out. I screamed. I came home. I was a, you know, tough little child in my own, you know, introverted way, and I can't go back there, and I will not go back there.
You mean not go back in memory?
I'm not going to go. No, I'm not going to go to school.
Oh, okay.
I mean, this was horrible. Number one, I didn't want to leave my mother.
Mm-hmm.
She was the main woman of my life, as everyone. You know, you
Sure.
don't ever want to leave your mother ever.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be very honest with
Yes,
that.
uh-huh.
As Hesse's the last thought in Hesse's Goldband and whatever the novel is, you know, he sees the mother and, you know, talk,
Yes.
mother, 5 years old, you don't want to go and listen to this nonsense of whatever they do in kindergarten. I even remember her name, Miss Macy.
Miss Macy.
I had to remember that name because, you know, she meant well, but she's my tormentor.
How so?
They made it. She's what? I don't want to do these things with all of these children. I want to do what I
Yes.
want to do.
Right.
I was Daniel Crockett or something
Yes,
outside
yes.
Daniel Boone or
Yes.
you know.
Yes. Now, David, you talk about the hierarchy of the afternoon versus the
Yeah.
morning.
Yeah.
Now, I recall
But I made a compromise.
what was the compromise?
They did it. You know, sometimes you have to really scream as a child, and
Yes.
children they're made to be very, very tame.
Mm.
You know, got to go to school. You got to. I'll never forget this. It's been bothering me lately. I remembered when I was talking about grades. I got grades in elementary school for any subject it was, or junior high. I don't remember what it said. Beside your grade, that was a B, and then they gave you something for industry and attitude.
Oh, yes.
Industry and attitude. My industry. I never took a book home in my life.
Yes.
Never would. Never could.
Mm-hmm.
Never could.
Mm-hmm.
They don't care if I never could. I'm going to fail then. You know their mind.
Mm-hmm.
Am I a rebel? Of course. Every child is until they're tamed down.
Mm-hmm.
Or as Goethe said, every child's a genius till they're socialized at 5.
I remember you citing that. Yes.
Yeah. It's a big one, I think. I mean, I can't have a child. I wouldn't let it go to school. I wouldn't, and I certainly don't want to teach it anything. There's nothing to teach.
Mm.
As the great Beecher said, when the Alexandria library burned down, good. All of that stuff was just superstition and not real knowledge yet.
Mm.
I said that to Menuhin, and he said, "Oh no." He was very upset with my statement to him, the great violinist. I said, "No, it was a great thing that the burning of the library." He couldn't believe I said that. You see, because that's so deeply traditional. Oh,
Yes.
all knowledge in a book. As Beecher understood, none of that stuff was any good. Just like most of the books ever written are no good.
Well, let's take that a little bit further. Again, referencing Walden, there's a passage in here where he references, I believe it's a Mexican Indian tribe, that each year has a habit of what I believe was called busking, where they would take all their possessions and then at the end of the year burn them. And so do you think to a degree, even though we're all appalled at the idea, at least in 20th century contexts, of the idea of book burning, but if we elevate it outside of political schisms and oppressions, do you think to a degree that mankind is so overburdened with history that we might in a sense be due for a degree of permitting ourselves to start again? Do you think we would reform a canon of some value if what we have was totally lost and yet there was a healthy enough population to reinvent the wheel?
Well, it's a wonderful thought. All of what you're saying is something that I would very much would like to be a part of. From the deschooling of the schools. Oh, let's not talk about, well, what do you do with them? I mean, of course, that's what school really was invented for, to get rid of the poor kids, to give the mother and father a chance to go to work together, and build the factories and the wealth for the few that will exploit me, you, and everyone they can to get another dollar. But no, we we are living in the death throes of history. And that's one of the reasons that I love the idea of knowing everything you can. That has nothing to, there's nothing wrong with knowing that, Bach was born in 1685 and died 1750, and you know exactly what happened, because that's a synthesis. That's all.
Yes.
We don't need to read history books. We have to find an educational system that will give us synthesis of,
Right.
of things and ideas. Of letting you know that the first class, if you have to have a school, will be yoga or meditation or drawing. And let's get rid of all those math courses for those kids, because math is a talent. I think we said this last
Yes, we
week.
did.
It made me hate school because I could never understand one possible thing. I tried to divide something recently. I've long forgotten it.
So have I.
Ridiculous.
And what you say is very true. Education normally seems to impose the burden of isolated facts, whereas synthesis can make use of infinite facts. But I don't think anyone can teach synthesis. That seems to be an instinct.
I taught it in my piano recording class on a small level.
How would you teach synthesis?
Well, I told them that, let's listen to, you all played these pieces, and now, but Cortot plays it to such a degree. We couldn't get away. That's what they said. We couldn't get away with playing it like that. Why? I said, is that too creative? Well, let's listen now to Friedman play the same piece. Even more exquisite and even freer. And did you hear how he brings out, instead of just the melody in the Chopin Nocturne, he brings the counterpoint out, because Chopin himself was sick and tired of pianists that just puffed up their melody, like we have almost every pianist today in recital. It's just, here's the nocturne, and there's the melody.
Yeah.
Make sure it's there, and this keep the hands together. What do you mean? Why should the hands be together? As he said, Earl Wild said, I never played one piece with my hands together always.
Why do you feel that tradition died out of left hand before right hand execution?
Because when they heard it on recordings, in people like Paderewski, who exaggerated it, it became, food for the critics to say, they didn't play the chords together or something, or the melody was, well, everything is floating. It should be floating. It should not be always together. We would have a new form of piano playing instead of this.
Well, I was astonished in your interview with Raymond Lewenthal to hear him cite the idea that left hand before right hand execution in a 19th century context, if we have legato to suggest the connectivity of the voice, that left hand before right hand execution gives us consonance, or the affectation of what consonance would be when one is performing say an opera paraphrase. I thought that was astonishing, because I never had heard anyone attach it to an extra pianistic element.
Yeah, he was a great thinker. He really could think outside of that little box that music has brought itself into. It's pretty well. I said to someone, you're leaving New York. What a shame! You're going to miss all those concerts that he loved to go to. And I said, and he said, "Oh no, David, the best concerts have long ago been played. We're not getting very many great performances."
And do you think, to a degree, the great early recordings are somewhat like an idea of a record or a document of freedom, and yet because they are documented, they also then put in motion the end of freedom because they are frozen? Is there not a catch-22 in that?
There is the great catch-22 to recordings, yes. As Hoare would say, yes, the best they can do is be documents of the music. But that's not enough.
Right.
You need a document of the music, any dullard can give it to you.
But what I mean is that, I guess this is very much like Lewenthal's statement, the early people who went into the studio had the chance and the latitude to exploit what latitude was left, and then to have any cause to make a record now. Where's the latitude to distinguish oneself in a finite text? I often wonder, what do you think for a young pianist now will be the motivation, except marketing, to make a recording?
I think there's no motivation except career. They're not
Yeah.
interested in their, what do they want to hear their performance for? There's 100 that are better than theirs.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're talking about the general and good level of pianism
Mm-hmm.
that is not in the world of amateurs anymore. There used to be very good pianists that
Yes.
were amateurs who played chamber music and so forth. Now we're talking about, the young people in the conservatories worldwide that are, oh, it would be great to be able to be a great pianist. Where they got this, I don't know, because, when they find out that it takes, 100 years to play the Chopin B minor, and the next day it can crumble.
Yes, you would say.
So-
Who was it that said that?
Arthur Lesser said
Arthur
it to
Lesser,
me.
okay.
Not those words; those are mine. But he said, "Oh gosh, the B minor sonata is, it's not like Liszt that you can bring it back tomorrow.
Right.
It's so exquisitely made for the hand. Chopin is gorgeously made for the piano sound, but never for the hand."
What do you think, David, just from a lifetime of meditating the universe of the piano, for someone like a Liszt, he seems absolutely free, when we read the literature, free of any need of calisthenic reinforcement. Meaning, once he knew a piece. So, do we think his hand was different, or some kind of neurological thing that permitted that?
We don't know. There are so many strange things in the musical talent, don't you
Yes.
think?
Well, I would think so, because still, when we see a photograph, we know he's a man, and we would know that if he was bedridden for a year, he would be subject to atrophy in his legs, we imagine, and it would take time, if that had happened to him, to get his strength back. But it doesn't seem to happen at that level to really masterful pianistic minds, that they lose what I feel like I have to maintain 5 measures, have to almost go through a preposterous calisthenic reinforcement before I even get to the practice part of it.
Oh, this is such a tremendous subject that is so subjective as well, and it will be fit into every human being that plays any instrument, but the piano being by far the most complex music.
Yeah.
The neurological system, in youth could have been so fantastic. By Mozart, by his 8th year, he may have never again had to even look at the music twice. He just
Yes.
looked at it,
Yes.
and he heard it, it translated from the eye. Well, we could do a score, and it will really help us. It's interesting to read it. It's really something wonderful to do. But Mozart, well, his level of learning, or this level of learning, must have been supernatural almost.
Yes.
I mean, nothing to do with what mortal man can do.
Right.
In that sense, they were the gods of the piano.
Yes.
When Liszt read Islame, and it was said he played it magnificently at sight. Well, this is the most difficult piece of that period in
Yes.
certain ways. And later Ravel, when he was writing Scarbo, he would study the Islame to see what Balakirev was doing. And Liszt sight reads it. I mean, is this a lie? Do people? Well, no. They were too good of ears that used to say this. They were excellent.
And too many people
Too many.
Lisztian witness moments.
Mendelssohn said, "I just heard a miracle at the Pleyel Rooms. I was with Liszt." It was the time when Mendelssohn was in Paris for 4 months, and Liszt played my G minor concerto. The manuscript was so awful. How could anyone have read it at sight perfectly? I have just seen a miracle.
Yes.
This is coming from
Mendelssohn.
the ears of
Yes.
one of the greatest of all musicians.
It's astonishing. Yes.
It's fantastic what certain...
Yes.
I've had students at Juilliard that I'm telling you, one week I was doing, the Scriabin preludes. We're looking through all of them in piano literature. and some guy that's new to the school, I don't remember his name even. I don't know if he ever, had any career of any type. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think he liked me. But, but
How did you feel that he expressed dislike?
I don't know. Many despised that I talked maybe too above their heads or gave them ideas. Remember, these are often people that don't know English all the time, so I never talked down to anyone.
Right.
But here was a kid. I don't know anything. I couldn't believe it. He played one after another, and he didn't lie to me. He didn't even know that there were the Scriabin Preludes 24, Opus 11 in every key, a la Chopin. Every note and every piece. He never.
As a reader, you mean? He just
As
read
a reader.
Them. Yes. Uh-huh.
5 years later, if you looked at him, and you'd have to start studying him. Horowitz was also a great sight reader. The nervous system is so attuned with the eye, with the reflex.
Mm-hmm.
I'm certain that I started piano much too late. And the only thing that saved me when I was starting at that age of 9.5, I believe, was that I was so good a baseball player already and in all sports that I just adored those sports, and I had such a tremendous hand and eye reflection that I think that it transferred instantly to the piano playing, because I don't think at 9.5, unless you're a Raymond Lowenthal, who certainly knew how to lie.
He started at 16?
He said so. He said he started at 16, and there are a few people that have done this.
That astonishes me.
And Paderewski said he only started real serious playing at 24 with when he went to Leschetizky.
Yes.
And he made his debut at 27 in London, and many pianists had long ago made their debut. This made it at 8 or 10, and many people did. Mendelssohn. But it's so sensational to realize what some people can do.
Well,
but they're overwhelming. Like, I remember this boy doing that. I said, I can't sight read anything, I said to myself, and here he is. I'm telling him to read these, and he just does. I was so jealous for a minute.
I understand. Now, you have given me wonderful reviews and reflections on baseball, not only your own experience, but in a way how it was a high cultural middle ground between popular and high culture. It doesn't have that, to me, that association anymore. Just like prize fighting, I think, used to have a different integration. Can you, however, maybe share notions of the tactile experience of baseball in analogy to the execution at the piano? It doesn't have to be literal analogies, but are there kind of physical parallels or metaphors?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I don't think there's that many.
Okay.
I do know that the balletic movement of the picture itself, there's nothing I like better is to see the different throwing styles, the wind up and the delivery of a picture, especially these two fantastic Japanese players that made such a sensation in the World Series.
You mean recently?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
I forget their names right now.
Yeah.
But I did know their names because I couldn't believe how wonderful they were. I don't care to watch baseball any longer because it's only important to me was that I played it. And the minute I couldn't play it, I had no interest in it. I understood this very famous ballet dancer I knew who had been a star of a real virtuoso dancer of the Ballet Russe de Monte Carlo. And she, when she retired, she gave it up forever. Never again to see any performance of a ballet. Had no interest in it, to see someone else doing what she loved doing.
Yes. I understand that.
Yeah.
Because especially...
I do understand that. I've gone to only 5 ball games in my life after I gave it up at 18. That's a many years. So, but I was told by my brother and others that these two fellows from Japan, who makes like $700 million
Right.
a year throwing
Yes.
a ball 100
Yes.
miles an hour, please donate that money to pianoevenings.com, David Dubal's series at the church on West 71st. Please, they'll begin again February 10th. If you live in New York, please look at the website and come to these, because you are going to hear the best young pianists and middle-aged and sometimes old ones.
Yes.
An old one played the theme in a couple of variations from the Goldberg.
Ah, which variations?
I don't
were
remember.
picked?
I don't
Okay.
remember, but she played the aria very beautifully. Anyone that's in the class, our battery is
That is a rare thing for us. I have not seen that. I don't think that we are necessarily at severe risk of being told to stop by
Okay.
Mr. Battery, but we might be close.
see that's a clock too.
Yes, it is.
You know, why not go for 24 hours? I could.
I could too. I
course you
guess. I guess. Well, that means that we have a power source within that's greater than any battery. That's the only explanation I can give for that.
I do remember that there was a film, which I wish I had, of me playing the piano at 10 or 12 or something like that, you know. And it was at some party. I was always asked, everyone had a little piano, you know,
Yes.
in those days, the Liberace days of,
Yes.
of glory. And I would play, but you know, if this were the party, I wasn't at a party necessarily alone at 10 or 11, but with my parents, or it would be my aunts or something. And I was filmed, and I was stunned. I was stunned. Here I am as an adult, and I sit at the piano, and I'm so tight and scared.
Mm-hmm.
And here I was as a kid. I mean, my arms were floating, my head was in the air. I
Yes.
needed, you know, I must have memorized whatever the piece
Yes.
was. And I don't know how to get that filmed, because I don't know the person anymore, or the person died.
And the film, when you saw it, was silent. I mean, it didn't-
Silent.
So, do you know what the piece was from looking
No.
at the image?
No, I didn't care about it. I just was so,
I see.
I just loved seeing myself
Yes.
being so happy.
I understand. Yes.
Then of course the lesson would come, and I would be stern again, you know, because a piano lesson is, oh, your teacher knows.
Yes. There's the rub. It is.
Yeah, it's not good. It's not
No.
good what kids go through.
No.
They're stymied forever
Mm.
unless you have that extra crazy energy
Yes.
that is like, if Mozart was God-given gift, then you and I have the God-given gifts of going 24 hours a day and
Yes.
talking.
Yes.
I can't practice 24 hours a day.
No, no.
It's too boring.
Yes, and that's something maybe people should be permitted to know. That in part of the struggle, when that kicks in, oftentimes again the morality feels that one should blame oneself, especially when one is spending time with a masterwork and finding the thoughts drifting, and that's something perhaps that I don't know who or when that should be introduced, but it should.
Oh, right in the beginning. And also, as Murray Pariah said to me in the interview I did with him, you know, he said, you know, you have to tell the young person, if they have these ambitions, especially if they come from the parents, you know, that's your main. Everyone wants to own a Mozart, you know.
Right.
And even if they don't know his music,
Yes.
the legend continues.
Right.
And so they all want to have a Mozart.